pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for March 21st. It's Wednesday. It's already March 21st. And Duane is on the line as well as myself, Kevin Laramee. And we're going to talk about today the ESPN player poll. But first, Duane, how you doing today?
Well, happy spring, everyone. Yesterday's first day of spring officially. It's been greeted, of course, with winter weather, so that's fun. But, you know,
Thanks, Mother Nature. Like, yay, spring, March almost over. Here's some snow and negative weather for you all.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you got to take, cold springs if you accept hot falls, because I am a true believer that the 21st of March, the 21st of September, 21st of December, these are the days that the months change, or June 21st as well for the other one in there, in case you weren't aware. Those are when months change. The first day of fall is not September 1st. It's September 21st. And it's always warm for a couple weeks there, and it's always cold for a couple weeks at the start of spring as well. So you take the good with the bad. I have a bit of a throat thing going on here, so if I sound like I'm talking like a late night DJ, that's why. So there you go. That's how I'm doing. If
Duane sounds like a exotic dancer DJ, that's why. And he's going to introduce Natasha. No, I'm just but nice radio voice, so as long as you don't cough in the mic, sounds pretty good. There you go. Now, this Wednesday, ESPN player poll, and we're finally after a few weeks into the season, we're back into the routine. The instincts are there, covering practice, recovering games, and doing our own thing. But the ESPN player poll came out yesterday, and it started a lot of people talking. And first of all, are you surprised by who's the biggest questions in that poll that always comes up every year, Duane, is who's the most overrated player according to MLS players? 104 players were polled. And who's the most overrated? So the underrated and overrated are basically two titles stemming out of this player poll.
No, I'm not surprised at all. And this is becoming an annual tradition now to talk about this. And I was a little bit reluctant to it this year because it almost seems clickbaity at this point, because really what we're getting from this poll is who is the most overpaid is what they're essentially they're asking. Who you think is the most overpaid.
Or who's hated by their peers. Who's not liked. Who's not nice to other players in the league. And it comes out in this survey.
And we're focusing mostly on the under or the overrated when we talk about this. This gets most of the clicks, most of the attention, because everyone likes a good little cat fight, right? Hercule Gomez, friend of the show, has a really good take on his podcast. If you want to go check that one out after you listen to us, go ahead. But
the Herc and Max podcast, available through ESPN.
Which is one of my favorite podcasts that we don't produce, by the way. It is actually very good. I like Herc. Herc has a lot of good at it. He has a rare ability to combine a hot take with a thoughtful take, which is something that's an art, and not a lot of people have that.
So how do you call that? A pancake?
A thought take?
A hot cake?
Yeah.
I would take some hot cakes right now.
Yeah, hot cake take. That's confusing. But at any rate, he basically says, "What are you, stupid?" Because it's there's a lot of strange ones there. But the focus, actually, before we get into the negative, let's talk about the positive, because I do think they get it right on the most underrated.
By far. I have to agree. And I'm going to toot my own little Montreal horn here. Nacho Piatti, according to 104 poll, is the most underrated player. And he has a 30% amount of vote for most underrated, which is 30-something players said, that guy's the best in the league and he's underrated.
Yeah, which is by far much greater than what the overrated is, right? And the other thing about this, too, one thing that Herc went off on this as well, is there's 20% of the respondents refuse to answer these things. And it's why are you taking part in the poll if you're refusing to ask these questions?
Why are you saying yes to the poll if they're saying, okay, first of all, we need to let the fans know that this poll is accepted to be answered by the players with the condition of anonymity. So we don't know who said what. But if you're going to have anonymity, just answer the damn questions. Otherwise, just say no to the damn survey.
Which a lot of people do, because there's only 108 respondents, right? So and as a lot of people pointed out, those 108 are probably mostly American or Canadian, domestic anyway. They're probably on the lower end of the salary range, and their answers reflect that. Really, this year in year out comes who's the most expensive, who's the most visible that you don't think maybe deserves their money.
Who then, are you the most jealous of? Who would you take his contract and his deal? That's why Mixed Discarud won the last 2 years. People are like, I can be like him. I'm better than him. Why not me? Why not my wallet?
Exactly. And look, the Josie and Michael Bradley are second and third in the poll this year. They were, I think, second and third in the poll last year too. It is very difficult for those of us in Toronto to wrap our head around the fact that either one of those guys is overrated, because we watch them week in, week out, and we watched them win 3 trophies last year. And I'm not sure how you can be overrated if you win everything there is to win. But if you take a step back and you look at how this is, and you also understand that this is a like off the top of the head kind of response, it makes sense. It's like these guys are in the news. While Josie and Michael didn't get us to the World Cup, so obviously they're overrated. Well, they won 3 trophies in MLS, and you're talking about MLS play here, so contextually, no, they're not.
Yeah, like technically, it's not even supposed to be included in the voting how you think of the national team of those 2 guys, because it's the MLS poll. But moving on.
Yes, and the Impact the Twitter account actually did was, I think they were trying to do a little shade towards the Toronto, because the Impact said we in English, we totally agree with these picks, and then a lot of people sort of picked up that they were both referring to Piatti and also probably taking a little bit of the piss out of Toronto for the 2 at the top one there. To which any Impact fans would agree with that. Just allow me this one. I would say that the Impact fans that are calling Josie and Michael Bradley overrated would be the equivalent of a Toronto Maple Leafs fan in 1979 calling Guy Lafleur overrated. I mean, come on, man. In the context of the league, they won everything and they're winning everything. And maybe you think that they're not quite as good as you think, but they're kind of good within the context of the league, and they're winning everything. So yeah, that's my only word on that one.
Yeah, fine. I would say maybe I would have compared him to Carey Price. Like, it's all good, good things, but you can't win by yourself, and that's what we've seen the national team and the club side. You're winning, so that would have been my analogy. But no, it is interesting. Just for Piatti for a second, the reason why I believe Piatti was voted the most underrated player, because he's low. He's a low profile player. He's not. I was talking about this on Saturday with other journalists in Montreal. He's not flamboyant. He's quiet. He's calm. Doesn't need to flash. Doesn't need to show his money. Doesn't need to show his skills. He's so confident in himself and his skills that he doesn't even need to see the need to show other people outside of playing a game or training. And that just a regular guy aspect makes for him to not be talked about, or like the guy's not on social media. He's not vocal outside of talking with his feet. So it does play a part in this overrated, underrated discussion. Other players don't see him as like a bad attitude, or don't see him complaining, because he's so low-key. The only thing that comes to the surface is the play. And if you have the play coming to the surface, you truly just value him for his play. And other players, that's what they see. That's what they experience. Piatti running around them with the football. I would have voted him most underrated too under those circumstances.
Yeah, no, he should have been in the conversation for MVP over the past couple of years, and he really wasn't. I mean, he wasn't close, right? And it's largely to do with the stuff you just said. Plus, you add in the fact that he's in a French-speaking market that's not in the United States, and you're not going to get a lot of attention in the U.S. It's the same factor that the Raptors or the Blue Jays or any team in Canada, anyone in the Whitecaps would face as well, in the fact that when you have an American-based league and you're a Canadian team in it, you are going to struggle to get attention. That's not paranoia. That's reality, because they don't get the same sort of ratings bump when they pump the tires of players that are playing outside the United States. That's just the reality of the media rights holders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, real quickly, Kevin, I just want to point out that I did the math yesterday for another reason altogether. Tuesday will be my 1,000th show. That's not why I'm saying this. I'm just remarkable that it took me 996 shows to reference Guy Lafleur in a soccer podcast. So
is it the first time? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. The first one off the top of our head, 1,000 show. At least 600 or 700 of those were together. So,
Yeah, no, it's 6 something for sure. Yeah, because it's 367 was the count of ICF, so you could do the math from there, and well over 1,000 when you count in 5 rings and all the other stuff that we've done over the days. So anyway,
I stopped the day we went daily. I'm like, yeah, we don't need to number shows anymore. We don't need to put the number in between the show because it's climbing way too rapidly.
Yeah, we hit 500 last November, by the way, if you're curious about that.
Good. Any other thing coming out of this ESPN survey you would like to talk about? We do have as well big players from big market, like targets, right? Juvenco's talisman players coming out in this survey, either good or bad. My question to you, Duane, what is the point of this survey? What is the goals of this survey?
Click, 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 click. It's about clickbait.
And we're talking about it.
Yeah, and well, because we have a daily show, so I mean, it's like, and other people are talking about it. That's the great dilemma of this, and this is an interesting topic. And I was tomorrow. There's going to be an NWSL preview interview that's going to go down the pipe. It's really good, and I hope you all listen to it. It is an excellent interview with Allison Lee from The Equalizer, and we talked about the chicken egg situation. And this is a chicken egg situation too. We're talking about it because other people are talking about it, and there comes a point, a critical mass point, where you have to talk about stuff, even if you go, oh, God, this is just clickbait, but everyone's talking about it. And it works the other way, too. When no one's talking about something, but you think it's important, where do you find that line of putting newsworthy stuff that you think is important to talk about versus stuff that everyone's talking about when you're doing a show like ours? It's a question for the ages, Kevin.
Any other question in this poll that caught your attention outside of underrated, overrated?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, there... Again, it's the N. The N is what caught my attention. When you're talking about, let's just look at the underrated, overrated for a second there. Josie Altidore is third. Everyone in this market's going blah, 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 blah on that. 8 people in the league said he was overrated. 8. That's, if you do the math, there's 103 respondents or whatever, and he had 7%. So it's like 8 people said he was overrated. That's what caught my attention, is how much this probably isn't that statistically relevant. It's probably your plus or minus, if you're looking in a Gallup poll kind of numbers, is like 10% probably. So I don't know how relevant, how realistic this is. I would find this an interesting survey if they kind of, looked at more issues that matter more for the day-to-day play, like, should we eliminate TAM and GAM or things like that?
Or did you notice the influx of investment in TAM and GAM over the last year and this year, the few months? Did you notice a change of quality on the field? Can you keep up with them, yes or no anymore, right? Those are the type of questions that I would ask players, especially if they have anonymity, is, are you keeping up? Do you see a difference in the league itself? We have the average age drop a few years, and we have younger DPs, younger player, or higher caliber player for what you're used to because of the TAM and GAM, which means basically teams that are willing to spend will have 3 DPs on the books and 3 off the books if you're looking at the Galaxy or Toronto. So did you see the difference on the field? Do you see an increase of tactical awareness, technical awareness? Are you still fit enough to run after those guys? Is your fitness that you have over those guys enough to bridge that tactical gap that exists? Those are the questions that I would ask them.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Those are the right questions to ask. Although, if you want to be catty about it, you want to be clickbaity about it, at least ask questions like, do you really think the NYCFC, NYRB derby is as big as anywhere in the world, quote unquote?
No. Why is it one of the biggest derby in the world? Would be the question asked. The guys are like, well, it's not, but I guess I can't say that. I have to answer the questions.
Is New York A, red, B, blue, C, purple, D, indifferent?
I would go with D, indifferent, but that is something totally separate. Just before we finish this segment and we move on to the bits and bytes, Duane, one thing that was impressive to me is when the players were asked, which is one of the toughest opponent you face on the field, one-on-one, the third most answered player was Piatti. Giovinco is up there, David Villa, and Piatti. So according to players, those 3 players are the toughest one-on-ones you get in Major League Soccer. And, well, I'm not surprised with those 3 names because if you're looking at the last 3 years, those should have been the MVP candidate all the last 3 years. They were a few years ago. Not the case last year, but yeah.
Yeah, just looking at those three players individually, like David Villa is probably the craftiest player in the league in terms of his understanding of space. He's a guy that knows how to, he's an older guy at this point, but he still is very effective because his quickness is tied into his brain more than his legs, and he's able to run to the right spaces and understand the space and what's happening in the field in a way that no one else in this league does at an equal level, and he gets himself into scoring positions and can finish very well. That's David Villa, and why they would all, like, defenders would be like, how the hell did he get there? Right? Like that kind of player. Yeah. And then you look at Piatti, who, I'll go back to Herculez Gomez. He referred to him as the best counter player in the league. He uses his speed and his ability on the dribble to charge at players and to really lead Montreal's attack in that counter type program that they're so successful in. And if they're going to change their tactics, I think that they got to be a little bit reluctant to do that because they got a player like Piatti out there. You got to use the talents of the player you have. And then Javenko,
you use Piatti like you did against Toronto. You left him up there so we can use that counter aspect with still controlling the game. But no, exactly.
And then Javenko is the trickiest player in the league, probably, right? In terms of his ability to dribble in tight spaces and to work a scoring chance out of nothing, and then obviously the free kick situation. So each of those players brings something unique, and you can understand why they would be, identified as the trickiest players, the best players out there. I guess it does get the lips flapping and does get us debating stuff, but again, think about how big the N is. It's not very big. Understand that when it comes to the big headlines that you're looking at really a small sample size and based a lot on sort of jealousy and financials more than actual playing ability. We didn't mention that Gio Santos was the most overrated player. Yeah.
And here, let's finish here. Do you agree with that? Because I do. And when you're looking at overrated, what does overrated mean, basically? Well, how much are you paid and how much are you contributing? Are those equal, or is there a big difference? And if that difference exists, is it overrated or underrated? And I think that's what actually gets people to say, Giovanni Dos Santos, we saw him at Tottenham, we saw him somewhere else, he played great, comes here, doesn't do squat. And that's what people have, that's why they're voting him as most overrated. Yeah.
No, that's the interpretation. It's like Coach of the Year debates, right? Like, what's Coach of the Year mean? Coach of the Year means generally coach that got the most unexpected result out of teams. Sometimes you have outliers. Greg Vanney last year was that. But usually in most sports, it's like team we thought was going to be bad that was actually good. But that's not actually, if you think about it, what it should mean. And it's the same thing with overrated. It means most overpaid player in your mind, whereas what it should mean is player that gets the most hype and is considered to be very good that actually isn't as good. So it should be
Tim Howard. So Tim Howard should win the most overrated.
That's who I would have picked, yes. But
just because he's not even the best keeper in his team.
Yeah.
In the words of Herculez Gomez, by the way, he mentioned that on his podcast and on ESPN. I have to say, I agree with you, Eric.
Yeah, Dos Santos has not lived up to his expectations. I will say that. And when you compare that, obviously, and not to be Toronto-centric, but they are 2 and 3, so it is relevant here. When you compare that to Josie and Bradley, like there's just different levels, right? Like those guys are winning in Toronto. They're doing what they're here to do. So is that overrated? No, not really. But Dos Santos, he was expected to lead the Galaxy, to be like this all-world guy when he brought in. They played him up like this was a person who was going to dominate this league, and he hasn't done that. And the Galaxy were the Wooden Spoon winners last year. So
then they had to go get his brother because the man was not happy, and now maybe he is more. But that tells you a lot of things too. So no, I agree.
Precisely. All right. That's our annual talk, because God knows we'll be doing it again next year at this time. So on that note, Kevin, maybe we'll take a break and do some bits and bites.
Exactly. We'll be right back with some bits and bites.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
You can listen to us live Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. at youtube.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN. And if you like what you hear and want to make sure it never disappears, patreon.com/Sports Podcasting Network. With your pledges, with your help, with your financial support, we're able to dedicate more time to research, more time to learning more about this beautiful game all across the world and bringing it to you with a soccer perspective. Duane, now we're back, and we're going to talk a bit about the NWSL in a few minutes. There's a few news with the bits and bytes and stuff going on. The floor is yours.
Yeah, first off, Kevin mentioned that patreon.com just real quickly. We are now up to we're up to 8 shows a week right now in terms of what we put out there. So we are more than daily really at this point in time. Yeah. So absolutely, if you like that niche coverage, you like having those bonus shows out there, that's the way to ensure that they continue to happen. And right now we're only planning to put one behind a paywall. Yeah. We might have to look at doing more of that down the line. But
yes,
anyway.
we might have. And the paywall is only like $1 a month. We're going to start in April, the beginning of April, so the next few weeks with the Patreon. There will be an overhaul of our Patreon page. Because if you look at our Patreon page right now, yes, there's $108. There's about 30-something patrons. And we appreciate every single one of you. $1 a month can go a long way, especially if you have numbers behind it. We actually know there's thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of you listening to our show right now. So we do appreciate your help if you can. And if you can't help us financially, share the show, talk about the show, tweet the show, tweet at us. Yell at us if you want. Talk about it good, talk about it bad, but, well, talk about it. And that's what we want. And with your help, we'll continue to do more. And we're right now at like $108 a month for Patreon. Hey, it's not here to make us rich. It's here to value our time. It's here to make sure the equipment that we have is sustainable in time, and that we continue to evolve with technology and with everything. We started a little far, like 4 years ago. We started with a very different technology than we have now, and we'll continue to follow the trends with your help.
We started from the bottom.
Now we're video.
Now we're here, wherever here is. Anyway, all right. Bits and bytes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Red Bulls and their CCL ticketing strategy here. It came out yesterday that in order to get a ticket for their semifinal home date with Chivas Guadalajara, you have to also buy 2 tickets to a future NYRB game. Now, at first you go, what? Why? What are you trying to reduce the crowd for? And then you go, oh, they're playing Chivas.
At first, when you mentioned that to me earlier this morning, I was like, why are they trying to milk their crowd and make sure they get tickets to come see New York anywhere else? I'm like, usually Red Bulls don't really care that much about their attendance, and it's not something they would do. Oh, wait, they're playing a Mexican team. Oh, wait, they just want to make sure it's full of New York fans and not Chivas fans.
Yeah, and look, I think that the Red Bulls, and this is an interesting strategy, the Red Bulls did not get very good crowds for their CCL games so far, outside of, the
200
folks.
Like a few thousand? You can basically name them more than count them.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite as bad as the MYRB 2 game that I watched this past weekend.
Well, there was no one for that one.
Yeah, there were 12 people, 13 people in the crowds, it looked like. At any rate, you could hear the instructions from the sideline on the YouTube page. That's
awesome, though. I remember that in the USL. Used to love having FC Montreal streams and hearing Philippe Lafroy, merde, cool. Oh, that was so awesome.
Yeah, well, then you turn on an FC Cincinnati game and, there's 20,000 people there. But at any rate, it's such a funny little league that way. And USL Radio, we'll talk about it this year, speaking of our shows. But no, look, it's absolutely an attempt to keep the crowd down. Like, when else do you hear them trying to reduce the crowd? And I think that's got to be it. They've got to realize that by requiring fans to buy 2 other tickets for their CCL game, they're going to get their, supporters groups guys there because they're season ticket holders already. So they've already met this requirement. So they're going to be there and they're going to be in their same voice that they always are. But a Chivas fan from New York City or from the area is going to think twice about whether they commit to 2 other games. And I'm sure that what will happen is there still will be a significant amount of Chivas fans that will be there, and they will buy the 2 other tickets for the NYRB games, and then they'll just rip them up.
Yeah. Or at least New York will make money off of Chivas fans. That's how I look at it. And you turn around and you sell those tickets again. Why not? They're not going to come.
Yeah, and you might have, there's a possibility that maybe 10% will show up for one of those games, and maybe you hook 10% of that 10% and you get 10 new fans. That's maybe something to look at as a bonus to this, but this is really just about keeping the away support down. And on that front, I got to sort of applaud them a little bit for this, because they're trying to give their team the best chance to win this competition. And in the past, you would have seen them just go, they would have like been advertising in Spanish, right? Like they would have been looking to fill that damn bowl up
like,
with people wearing
come on,
red,
Chivas
white.
fans, come cheer your team playing our team. Come on, come to New York. Vamos, vamos.
Exactly, and we're not seeing that anymore, and that's been a bit of a change in CCL, and I've got to credit all three Canadian markets for that in a little ways. Also RSL, they certainly supported that tournament to at an extreme level before other teams were, and this is maybe a nouveau MLS thing that the old market MLS teams still struggle to get behind, and it's a funny little league that way. Most leagues, the traditional markets are the strongest markets. You look at hockey, the original six markets are where your strongest fan bases are. You look at basketball, Celtics, Lakers. The Lakers, even though they've sucked forever right now, are still one of the strongest markets out there. But in MLS, the older markets are often the weakest markets, and it's because those fans in those markets went through bad days with MLS and days when they didn't think the league was going to exist, and they resisted supporting it, whereas the new markets came in with, jumped in with both feet, right? Yeah. So they've done that in the CCL as well, and I think that's changed the attitude across the league, and this is a reflection of that. The New Yorkers would rather play in front of 1,000 people that are cheering for them than 18,000 people that are cheering for the opposition, because they think that gives them a better chance to win the 1,000 situation, and that's a good thing. TFC tickets on sale as well, obviously too. They were priced. I can tell you right now, real quickly, they were priced at $24 in the supporters end. That's the low end ticket, so they're not cheap. Well, they're cheap-ish, but they're not. 24 is not exactly giving them away either.
You don't have the benefit of season ticket packages, and those already been taken care of with the beginning of the CCL and other friendlies and everything. So you do have to pay maybe a little more. Maybe usually it's closer to 20, the average of a price of a ticket if you're a supporters section holder. But semifinal, Club America, you get to see one of the most entertaining coach on the sideline I've ever seen, Miguel Herrera. Man, this is going to be a show. I hope there's a camera on him the entire game, because just that is worth the price of admission.
I'm very much looking forward to the post-game press conference.
Bring glasses. Bring your glasses and make sure they have wipers on them, because it can get a bit agitated, and especially rainy if Miguel and Herrera starts talking really loudly, if you know what I mean.
Precisely. All right, a couple other quick things. My throat's holding up, so we'll keep going here. Nashville last night had a bit of a scare. If you don't know, there's some spectacularly, if you like intrigue and like sort of political drama and like weird stuff happen in municipal politics. If you enjoyed the Doug Ford or the Rob Ford story in Toronto a few years ago, you should try Nashville out now. There's some weird stuff going down there. Mayor just got kicked out because she was having an affair with her bodyguard and got involved in some criminal activities. And Nashville, some of the people that were opposed to the stadium used that as an opportunity to reopen the stadium debate last night. And there was a chance, a long shot chance, but a chance nonetheless, that they might have revoked their approval for the stadium. And then God knows what MLS would have done with that. They may have actually pulled the expansion offer.
They may have already decided what to do with it, because if we go back to last week, it was rumored that FC Cincinnati was going to be announced at the end of the month. So we'll see if that arises. But Cincinnati looking more and more like that number 2 expansion. And Nashville, well, if things don't get in line, they might lose what they have been given a few months ago.
Yeah, and look, the vote failed last night to reopen this debate. There was a vote, a motion to revoke the approval, basically, and then one of the supporters of the stadium, the gentleman that put it forward, who has been opposed to it all along, is a vocal opposition of the stadium plan. He immediately jumped upon this opportunity to get it back on the docket using the provision within the Nashville city bylaws to allow them to revisit situations that had already been decided. It failed, as I said, because there were a lot of absentees there, and there really wasn't the votes because they require a 2/3 majority for this to flip something. So basically someone who supported the stadium quickly went, no, we're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to vote now if you want to vote on it. And they did, and it failed. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's completely out of the woods yet. There are a couple more approval votes that need to come up. And if any one of those fail, then this could go back into problem areas. Now, most people think that that's unlikely to happen, but it bears watching that even when things seem, soccer always fights. And because
yeah, it's true.
it doesn't, like, if this was a football stadium, NFL football stadium, you know damn well it would have been proved and out and done already. Baseball, same thing. Basketball, same thing. Hockey, maybe not as much, but probably same thing. Whereas it's soccer, yeah, they still have people that resist it because they just don't like say, it's just soccer.
Yeah, because they don't like it. And they're like, yeah, well, I don't like soccer. And if I don't like something, I guess my constituents don't like something either because they elected me to be there. And I guess what's good for me is good for everyone. So, yeah, I'm closed-minded. I don't like to open myself to the rest of the world. You get that sense a bit. But, oh, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We love the game. I don't care who else does or doesn't.
Well, which is the attitude you take. To be clear, though, I just, Kevin and I have talked about stadium issues a lot on Five Rings, which will be tomorrow, by the way. And we're clear that we don't think that you should just give carte blanche to cities or to leagues or whatever to build stadiums at the taxpayer's expense. There has to be a benefit that's beneficial to the overall taxpayer, whether that's literal or whether that's what we call soft benefits. And I think that there's enough soft benefits here that this is positive for the Nashville city as a whole, and the overall commitment is more of a loan than it is an outright grant. So I think it's a worthwhile project. Anyway, it seems like it's fine. We talked about Cincinnati as well. We've been saying that for a while, that they look like the next team in, which means Sacramento. We'll see.
Yeah, it doesn't mean a lot of good things for Sacramento at all. All right, let's finish the show by hyping a bit tomorrow's interview. Tomorrow, we are publishing Allison Lee's interview with the NWSL. She writes for The Equalizer. You had her on the show last year as well when we previewed the Women's Euro in Europe, in UEFA. And WSL starts this weekend, Duane. The Boston Breakers are no more. What else caught your attention quickly for this 2018 NWSL season? Is it the last season that starts without a Canadian team? I'm going to ask you this question every year until we have one.
There was, for the first time in the history of TFC's franchise, they said out loud that they were considering looking at bringing a women's team in earlier this year. Bill Manning said that they feel that they're on the right pathway. When I asked back in the day, they always said they needed to get the men's team right first, which
was fair.
They did.
Which was fair.
Good point. Touche.
Good point, Bill. Yeah, you got something there.
At any rate, so and the Whitecaps, I don't know about how the Whitecaps are doing it there when it comes to that. They like to play up their women's program, but it's a Rex program that's largely funded by the government and not necessarily coming out of their pocket too much. But at least I'd be accused of bashing Vancouver too much. I'll leave it well enough alone there and ask you a question directly. No, I think that 2020 is more likely for a Canadian expansion team, and I've always felt that if they're going to come up to Canada, they're going to come up in a pair. So there would be Vancouver plus one of the Eastern teams. And since I have heard literally nothing in Montreal that suggests to me that they're interested, I would suggest that would be Toronto that would come in as the second team. Yeah. I hope that happens. And I actually, honestly, I would rather Ottawa or Hamilton were to bring a women's team in. Hamilton in particular, I think, would be an interesting market.
You know what I'm going to say. You know what city I'm going to say. They come out. Bring back the Comets. Laval. Laval's got a pro hockey team now. Build a soccer stadium on the same site. You got yourself a team next to a metro that potentially can bring some fans.
The consistency to what we're arguing, though, I think, is that having the women's team in an MLS, I would, in the MLS market, isn't necessarily going to. They're fighting against the MLS team, right? And if they were in Hamilton or if they were in Ottawa, if they were in it doesn't matter, London, Ontario, they would be the biggest show in town, or at least on equal footing, I would suggest, with the Canadian Premier League team that was there, and that would provide them with an opportunity, I believe, to get going on the right foot. Whereas if they go into Vancouver and Toronto, they're immediately going to be compared to the MLS product. And even if they were drawing 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, which would be good crowds, people would look at that and go, well, there's 30,000 for TFC and there's only 7,000 for TFC women. So why would I, and that's a problem. That's a perception problem that exists across this league. At any rate, That's certainly something that I hope to see happen. Though I've been long hoping for an NWSL team in Canada. It would certainly make it a lot easier for those of us that care about the women's game to follow the NWSL, which is difficult right now because of the way that we have to search for stuff and there's others. It's hard to follow it and any consistency. I rely on experts, and they're great experts. Alison Lee was a great interview, and I highly recommend listening to it. But
So wondering how I'm gonna watch the games this year. Like, it's easy. Oh yeah, go to go90.com. Yeah, it doesn't work in Canada. So I can't watch anything on go90.com, okay? It doesn't work.
And we understand we can do a VPN, yes, but sometimes you don't want to jump through 6 hoops to make something work, right?
And my
Sometimes
computer is pretty good because it does like a daily show in like 1080p. So I'm not gonna put my computer through illegal streams. So there you go. So yeah, it's gonna be difficult, but we'll make it work, and we'll talk about it tomorrow with Alison Lee, the NWSL preview show. Duane, just to finish up on today's show on the NWSL, there's only a handful, if not less than that, of years left to Christine Sinclair's career. Wouldn't it be nice to see her retire in Canada? Wouldn't it be nice for her to, her last season as a player on the club side, she kind of does a bit of a Reggie Dunlop, and she, not as a coach, but as an ambassador for that club, brings, I don't know, let's put a club in Vancouver or guess like close, and NWSL team in Canada. Christine Sinclair is the ambassador, the superstar. She plays a year, then she gives the baton to Fleming, and then we got ourselves a good team for a long, right? That's something that, having talked to Christine Sinclair a few times, she loves to give back, and she wants to see that transition, and she wants to see all her work and her effort of the last 20 years not necessarily be forgotten, and don't want it to fall between two chairs or fall on deaf ears. She wants to see that progression continue, and that would be a good way to make sure that at least on the club side, that progression continues.
Yeah, and look, that's obviously a lot of people have suggested that if Vancouver were to get an NWSL team, that it would be a perfect fit for Sinclair to move up there and retire. Now, the one caveat, I've asked Christine Sinclair this directly in the opportunity I've had to speak to her in the past over in a press call. I asked her about the Vancouver situation, and she was very diplomatic about it.
She's happy in Portland.
What she did, she did stress that she loves Portland, and there's no, that's not fake. She does love Portland. She went to college in Portland. A lot of her life is there. I suspect that if you
she's gonna live there. She's not gonna be living in Canada. She's gonna live in the States. She's gonna live in Portland. Yeah.
Yeah, and if the Timbers were playing the Whitecaps and you got inside her brain, I suspect that she's more of a Timbers fan too, because she plays for the Thorns.
Yeah, at least you didn't say Canada, United States, because we know she would cheer for Canada at least. But
that's no doubt there. Yeah, no doubt. I think that said, there would be a tremendous amount of pressure upon her if there were a Vancouver team to come up and finish her career there. Yeah. And the league would probably be looking for ways to make that happen.
So Christine, you remember the Beckham rule? Here we got the Sinclair DP rule for NWSL, and you're coming to Canada.
You think about it, if they came in with an East-West sort of two Canadian team situation in 2020, Jessie Fleming would be coming out of UCLA at that point too, and they would probably try and find a way to get Jessie Fleming to the East team and Christine Sinclair on the West team, and then you would sort of have a Canadian star on either coast, right? Well, not the coast. I lived in the Maritimes. I just slap myself on the wrist for that.
Duane, if I ever say things like this in my in-laws, I'm getting beat up. Montreal is not in the East Coast, I guess.
But I used to live out east. Yeah, it was people from the West would talk about those damn Easterners, and they'd be talking about Ontario, and I went, you do know the Maritimes are over here. There's a little irony to this. You complaining about the Easterners ignoring you when you're completely ignoring the Maritimes by doing that. We anyway, enough of the Canadian drama there. Yeah. One last plug on that. Alison Lee's her name. She's the assistant managing editor of the Equalizer. She's a very articulate, well-informed guest. 34 minutes we talked last night. We talked about the Christian Press situation in Houston. We talked about the Utah Royals moving from Kansas City. We talked obviously about the Boston Breakers, and we did a bit of a preview in terms of what the teams to watch for this year. I won't spoil who she picked, but if I had to make a pick right now based on my research, and I will bow to the NWSL specialists in this every time, but based on what I've been reading over the last couple of days, you got to go with Portland. You always got to go with Portland. They're a very strong program there, and Christine Sinclair is timeless. She's ageless, and she's going to pass Abby in the next couple of years, and that's going to be quite the moment.
You know what they say about Portland, eh? They're a thorn in everybody else's backside.
Well, they are. They're the Yankees of the NWSL for sure. And
Oh,
I got the pun.
they're called the Thorns. So that's
Yeah, no, I got the pun. Yeah, it's just it's like
on that
like
note.
It's like Montreal's having a big impact on MLS. Yes,
it's crazy. It's crazy. On that note, I apologize. I'm gonna wish you a great day. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. You can listen to us Monday to Friday live at 10 a.m. on our YouTube feed, youtube.com/sports podcasting network, and as well you can encourage us financially at patreon.com/sports podcasting network. Continue the rise, continue the evolution. With your help, we can continue the progression. And until tomorrow, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.